Hello and welcome to Monday morning. It's a typical Monday morning here in Burnsville, and I had an interesting experience yesterday where I forgot to charge the car the night before, and yesterday was Mother's Day, so we had to run around town a little bit, and I didn't realize that after I had driven on Saturday that my wife also did some errands in the Tesla. And so instead of coming Sunday morning out to do errands and go see the mothers, instead of having 50% for the day, we had about 31%. And we probably could have made it, but as we drove up through the metro of the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, it just made sense to make a stop and hit a supercharger along the way. And there happened to be one right on the highway where we were going. So it was all very easy. We stopped for about 10 minutes at a Target, no problem. But it made me think that there's a lot of people who don't have charging at home, and made me think about what that life would be like with an EV. So last night when we got home, I plugged in at home, charged it to 80%, and then I thought, well, what if we go through our daily or a typical week and see how much charging you actually need to do the typical weekly, trip to work when people are back at work, and then, the daily errands you do. So I charged up last night, like I said, to 80%, thinking that, at some point over the weekend you would get a charge if you couldn't charge at home. And then from there, I'm just going to do a normal trip, normal daily trips, and kind of see how the week plays out. Because my wife and I are both currently working from home, I thought, well, I'll drive by my old workplace, but that's only a few miles from my house. So I thought that's not going to be real typical for most people. They're going to have some sort of commute. My wife's got a longer commute. I can't remember the exact distance, but I figured that's a more robust test of this charging. So I'm going to drive up to her work. I think it's about 20 miles each way. I'll do that this morning, drive there and back, and then the rest of the daily errands, see where we are at the end of today. And then she might take it. If she has to go into the office, she might take it some other days. But then we'll just see through the course of this week, how much do we need to top off and how inconvenient was that? Now, there are superchargers along the way, so if I get stuck or she gets stuck, it's an easy stop off, and I know that's not the case for everybody, but where I am here is a park in Burnsville, and I stopped here as kind of a simulation of, if you stopped for coffee or something along the way to work. But I also wanted to illustrate that, there are places like this that have level 2 charging, which isn't fast, but if it's nearby your home, there's another one of these units in Burnsville, right next to an apartment complex. And there's actually an apartment complex right behind me here too. So if you lived in those places, you would have charging near your home. Let's hit the road and see how this week goes using public charging or just waiting to charge. So let's hit it. So I just got back from the work run, and that turned out to be about 28 miles each way, a total of 56.4 miles since I left home. We used up 20%, so quite a bit, but most of it is highway, and the traffic wasn't too bad going up there. Coming back, it was a little heavier, but very easy, beautiful day for a drive. Temperature's good, so a lot of things in our favor, but that is a relatively decent drive to get to work for most people, I would think. So we're not going to plug in here, and we're going to go right to whatever errands and other things we have for the day, and keep running the charge down until we need to hit a public charger. and catch up then. Oh, hi. You've caught us in the park. We just saw some baby ducks. School got finished and we finished with snack. So it seemed like a good time to come and see the ducks. And there were some babies, so that was pretty cool. We also got to see the geese. So fun little outing on a Monday afternoon. I think we drove about 2.5 miles to get here, so it'll be 2.5 to get back. And I think we're at about 57% right now. All right, it is Tuesday and I'm doing a retake because I forgot to hit record this morning. But basically doing the same pattern as yesterday. I made this stop as a simulated coffee stop, but also to show that there's another charge point charger right here that is attached to another apartment complex not too far from the Performing Arts Center and park here in Burnsville. So another good location for public charging. So this morning I did that same run up to my wife's workplace and back, and then stopped and did another errand. All right, so we're back from the work run on day 2. A couple things I wanted to mention. Obviously the distance was the same, but I wanted to point out that I'm going the speed limit over, using climate, charging my phone, doing all the typical things. I do drive a little fast, but staying within reason, but definitely not trying to cheat and make this hypermiling situation where I'm getting more miles than the average person would. Although the weather has been almost perfect the last couple days. Luckily that does happen every now and again here in Minnesota. The other thing I wanted to point out is that when we go to the park or when I just ran to the hardware store, I do leave Sentry mode on. So again, you know, that eats up a little bit, but I'm doing all the typical things that you would do if you were driving around and living in an apartment instead of a house with a garage. Then after my daughter got home from school, we went to another park and played there for a while. And there's one more errand to run tonight, so tomorrow we're probably gonna have to charge. I think we started the day at about 55%, and now we're in the low 30s. It's another beautiful day. It's Wednesday morning, and I'm at another public charger that's near a whole bunch of townhomes and apartments. This is another public spot in Burnsville. I've not charged here, but this is my simulated coffee stop, so I wanted to start from a similar position. This is not too far from the other chargers from Monday and Tuesday. In the heart of the city in Burnsville, there's quite a few options for charging. We're gonna do the work run right now, but we're at 27% now on Wednesday morning, so that means probably on the way back we'll have to stop and charge up. But let's hit the road and find out. Okay, so we are now at work and we've driven 166.8 miles since our last charge when we started with 80% on Monday morning. It's now Wednesday, we'll call it midday, and we've got 17%. So this is the point where I would think most people in a gas vehicle would be saying, okay, I'm below a quarter tank, I need to stop and get some fuel. And we could probably make it home with this 17%. In fact, I'm sure we could, but since we're trying to illustrate public charging, I want to stop and find a supercharger on the way back and see what our options are and how long that's going to take. And this would be typical for, you know, stopping at the gas station on your way home, maybe picking up a couple groceries as you go. So pretty typical things most people would do in a workday anyway. So let's take a look at the screen and see what our options are. So here we'll just tap the screen and see we've got a supercharger in Robbinsdale. That's 150 kilowatts, so that's version 2. Supercharger in Minnetonka, that's 250 kilowatts. So actually we're in a really good spot here where we've got 4 supercharging options within 10 miles. That's pretty amazing. Doesn't happen everywhere, probably only in this part of the cities, but it's great that the infrastructure is being built out like that. Let's go to the St. Louis Park supercharger, which I believe is at a Target, and that's going to give us 250 kilowatts and give us a little more time because it's about 9 miles away. It's going to give us a little time for preconditioning. So we'll navigate there and hit that charger, do a little shopping, and have a charge for the rest of our week. So we were ramping up here. It is 10:26, just plugged in. Still have it set to 80. I'm gonna bump that limit up just in case I'm here a little longer. We'll see. I'm gonna go into Target and shop. So we'll see what that ends up. But we're cranking up the kilowatts here, 180 already. Run in, Target is right there. Was just about to get out and noticed the kilowatts kept climbing, and they went up to about 237 before they topped out. So now we're slowly coming back down a little bit, but you can see we're already to 19%. Again, running into Target, and I'll be back shortly. 10:49, and I just got back from shopping. Got some groceries, got a few other items I needed. Came out to 74% here. That's pretty good, considering we started, I don't know, somewhere around 12. So just in that short little shopping trip, I almost got back up to where I was at the beginning of the week. I'm going to sit here for another couple minutes just because I need to check the location of my next errand, and may as well stay plugged in while I do that. Just got my next errand figured out. That took me about 5 minutes now, and we're already to 82%. So plenty for the rest of the week driving around. Gonna jump out and unplug. Back home on Wednesday, and the thought that occurred to me as I drove back is that I'm not technically doing this during rush hour times, maybe at the tail end of the morning hour rush hour, but I think that actually works in favor of this test because I'm going faster than you normally would in stop and go traffic or busy highway driving where the speeds never really reach the speed limit or not much over it. So I'm definitely going faster than a regular commute. So just a thought I had. All right, good morning. Last night we went to another park and had a couple adventures, ran a couple other errands. And this morning we're starting out with some errands first, and starting from a different charging point than before. Starting from Hy-Vee, one of the stores that's not too far from my house that has EV charging. Now I did plug in this morning because it is super rude to take up a charging spot and not plug in. So although I didn't need a charge, I was still at 70% when I got here this morning. Just trying to not be rude for the few minutes I'm here I may as well pick up a little juice and do things properly. So this is just another example of a charging location you would have if you lived in an apartment along the daily places you go. There are 4 chargers here, 2 in the area where I'm parked, and another 2 on the other side of the lot here. And these are ChargePoint level 2 chargers, so nothing fast, but if you're going to be shopping for a while or getting lunch at the cafeteria area, you can get a few miles while you do those things. All right, finally got back from the Thursday run, and this afternoon we won't be going to a park. My daughter has a therapy session, so that's going to add about 30 miles onto our routine here tonight. But a lot of people have, either recreational sports they do, or kids in therapy, or kids in other sports. So I'm leaving this extra mileage in. Because it is real life stuff and everybody's got different things like this. I'm not going to take footage of it because it's more of a private family thing, but that's the activity for tonight, and then I'll see you on Friday. Good morning. It is Friday. We are starting out from Valley Natural Foods, another retailer just a mile or 2 from my house that has EV charging. There are only 2 spots here today. And so I'm not going to plug in for the 2 minutes I'm going to be here. There's no point in charging in and taking up a spot if a couple people would show up and actually need to shop and charge. We are going to do the work run again, and because it's Friday and we've got the weekend ahead of us, I am going to stop back at that Target in St. Louis Park and charge up for the weekend. Let's get on the road. I want to say we pulled in here with like 22%, already up to 26%. I didn't precondition the battery as long. I forgot to navigate here right away, and we also aren't at that low state of charge, so we're only over 200 kilowatts for a couple seconds there. Preconditioning takes a little bit of extra juice for the battery to warm itself up. So we got here in the low 20s percentage, and that's probably about where most people are going to start to feel like they need to charge. And so we could have easily gotten home, but going with the premise that we wouldn't have home charging, well, on your way home then on a Friday, you would stop and charge so you had plenty for the weekend. I feel like I've done quite a bit of driving this week, so this might be more than your typical mileage for a week. I'm not going to take you through the weekend. I have quite a bit of driving to do, so I will be charging up some extra. But assume that on a typical weekend, you would probably need to stop and supercharge one more time. Roughly 3 charges a week, and at superchargers, those are probably 20-minute stops. Now, for me and my family, that usually can be tied into if it's at a Target, or I know some Electrify America stations are at Walmart's, where you could do your grocery shopping or your weekly shopping. And I know we always forget something or need an extra gallon of milk or something throughout the week. So the Wednesday stop I did here was just covering some of those extras. Now, usually my wife has a grocery list over the weekend that she will, go through and it can take an hour of shopping. If she were driving and this was her typical situation, she would probably have that plan for her Friday, and on her way home Friday night, do that shopping while she does this charge. Or a weekend charge if there was a lot of driving around for the weekend. So I will see what the total costs for these two charges are, and then add one additional charge to what that would be for a week. But at the Hy-Vee and at the Valley Natural Foods, those were both free, hosted by the businesses. So that's fantastic. But you also wouldn't spend a ton of time there. If there are chargers in state parks or other local areas like the public charging in Burnsville, if you were going to go there with family or for a performing arts, at the Performing Arts Center, there are dance recitals, there are theater shows, there are comedians, concerts, all sorts of things. So if you were attending one of those things, plugged in there, you could easily get a couple hours of charging just while you're at that event. And in just the time I've been talking, we're already up to 52%. So especially these V3 chargers, are very, very quick. But those are my initial thoughts here. Like I said, I'm not going to take you through my weekend because everybody does different things on their weekend, so you're going to know what you'll need to do. If you're the kind of person that just stays at home and gardens all weekend or something like that, is watching sports or whatever, then you probably wouldn't need that extra charge. If you've got a weekend like mine, that's pretty crazy, where I'm going to be driving all over the state, then you're going to need an extra charge or two on your weekend. So knowing that and what your lifestyle is like and what you kind of foresee it becoming in the future, you'll be the best judge of that. So I'm going to run into Target now and grab a few things, use the restroom, come back. By the time I get back, I'm sure I will be at or above 80% again. Okay, just got back from shopping, and although I'm a very efficient shopper, I am also the worst at picking which lane to go through. If there is a lane with someone with a problem or a question that needs resolving, I will definitely be at the end of that line. If there are only two people in the line in front of me and I think I've got a good one, both of those people will have questions or issues, or a register person will need to swap out to someone else, or all three of those things will happen. So I was in there for about 20 minutes, it looks like. I'm at 84%, and again, charged definitely more than I need to for today for myself. But again, this is taking into account that this would be your charge for the weekend, or at least to get you kicked off for your weekend. So according to my energy graph, just in the time I went in the store and came back and obviously recorded these things, I've gained about 180 miles, and that would be real world because that is based off the energy graph. But I'm going to head home now, total up the amount of miles driven and the charges for the supercharging, and give some final thoughts. All right, so here we are. It's Friday night. We made it through the work week and ended up with, by the end of the day, having 80%, which is right where we started on Monday morning. So kind of a perfect bow tie, and kind of leaving your weekend plans, you'll kind of know how those go. We charged twice, as you know, Wednesday and then again this morning. And really we charged three times. The stop at Hy-Vee, where we charged just for a couple minutes. That was also a free charge hosted by Hy-Vee, so I'm not going to include that in the cost, and I'm not going to include that in the charging amount because we pretty much just got 1%, so nothing really to write home about there. It's not going to change how your week goes. But over the course of the week, we drove 374 miles. So compare that to what you think you would do in a week. Let's see if that matches the kind of commutes and errands and things you would be doing in a week. And then our supercharging cost was $30.24, which is kind of high. But I'm saying that as a comparison to what I usually do, which is charge at home. And had I charged that same amount at home with the off-peak charge rate that we get, that charging would have been $8.16. So a big difference in being able to charge at home or utilize free chargers than using supercharging all the time. So depending on what kind of gas car you have, I'm not sure that an EV is going to save you a ton if you're utilizing superchargers to do these long weekly commutes like we were doing. Especially when you consider that, depending on your weekend plans, you may have to add a third charge in there. And that would bring your cost up to about $45. So that's not cheap for a week's worth of driving. But depending on your gas car, it might be comparable or maybe a little less. In my case, I do have the luxury of being able to charge here at home for that drastically lower price. Now, our other car is a Prius, and so that can be relatively cheap to run. So probably it's pretty comparable to do the week's transportation if you had to supercharge all the time with owning a Prius. But you also don't have the other maintenance costs of the oil changes and other upkeep of parts with the Prius over time. EVs do cost a little bit more though, so it's a trade-off. Another thing I wanted to point out quickly was that the Tesla Model Y has a rated range of 326 miles. Now that's best case scenario estimates based on very specific tests. And so it's pretty tough to get those numbers in the real world. Also, most people don't charge to 100% every day and drive it all the way down to 0% before they charge. So that's kind of why I started and ended this test at 80%. It's what I usually charge to. And I was also not going down as low as I might on a road trip. If I knew I was going to hit a charger, I might, space that out so I was going to get there with maybe 5%. But most people in a gas car are, not waiting till the light turns on to get gas, or at least not wait till it gets very, very close before they get gas. They see about the quarter tank level and they go, okay, I better stop sometime soon. So that's why my charging stops both ended up around the 20% mark. So, you've got some range you're not using there, some range you're not using on the top end. And in those cases, you're obviously not going to get near the rated range of the vehicle. Then when you add on to that, traveling at highway speeds or a little faster, depending on where you are, that can have an effect as well. But the weather was actually pretty perfect for these tests. And it looks like between the charging stops I made, in the real world, I got about 170 to 180 miles between 80 and 20%. So that's not the 326, but again, we aren't using it all and we aren't in ideal conditions. So I was plenty happy with that. Again, I think I kind of showed the stops I made that time was easily filled up with getting groceries and other supplies of life. And not just the charging stops with the convenience of the target that happened to be having a supercharger and right on my way home. I also wanted to show some of the other public charging options that are available not too far from my house. I know not everyone has the same situation, But I'd encourage you to visit a site like PlugShare and see what's around you. You might be surprised. And that infrastructure is really growing pretty quickly. So if I lived in one of those apartment complexes that I showed near the first 3 chargers that I stopped at, I wouldn't have any problem owning an EV, knowing just a few steps away I've got a charger where I could leave my vehicle overnight. Especially in the parking garage where it's covered and a little more secluded. But even the single unit in the small parking area is pretty well treed off and not very visible from the side of the road. In fact, the first time I was looking for it, I drove by it twice before I found it. So if you're in an apartment and considering an EV, take a good look at what your daily commute needs are, what other extra errands and things you do. Take a look at the public charging that's available around you. Make sure you take the time to understand if you're looking at a specific vehicle. Make sure you understand the plug type and the charging speed. And make sure you know that range is going to suit your needs and you'll have a place to plug in. And I think you can get by relatively easily. Is it as easy as plugging in a garage? No. And if your apartment or condo can put charging units or even just a plug in a parking garage or a parking stall, that'll be much easier also. When we first got our Model Y, all we had was the 120 plug. And I was a little concerned thinking, oh, I'm going to need to make those supercharger stops. But really, I was able to get by just plugging in on 120. Whenever I got home, I would charge, just so that would always be, working on topping up the battery. And I didn't have any problems going where I needed to. And that was in relatively cool weather, but not terribly cold. In the winter, it will be more difficult, but it can be done. I know some people in North Dakota who primarily use 120 charging, and I don't quite know how they do it, but they do it. If you have any other questions, if you're in an apartment or a condo and trying to understand what EV options might be best for you, there are a lot of resources out there, but if you have questions you think I can answer, I'd be happy to give them a shot. So leave comments down below. And if you live in an apartment with an EV and have some good advice that you can share with other people, also leave those comments down below, because it's best if we can all learn from each other and share those experiences. One thing I wouldn't want people to do is get into a situation where they get an EV thinking it's going to work and then have to go back to gas, even if they like the car, and have it not work for them. So really take the time on the front end to understand your needs and what your options are. And hopefully more and more options from vehicles and charging will be here shortly. And so with that, thank you for watching. Have a great day. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. And if you didn't, thanks for sticking with it. But have a great day. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.